Oh, surprise, surprise, surprise. You look up and, it's always nice to see a surprise of the caliber of the one that just walked through the doors of Ann Arbor Radio. You normally hear this segment over the phone as we are live here inside the Suburban Chevrolet Make the Choice studio. Sam Webb and I rewind Traub on the other side of the glass.
But it's a good thing he walked in when he did, because I was about to call him.
Yeah, sitting across from me is Marcus Ray with some rays of light this morning live in studio. Marcus, how you doing this morning, man?
Sam, I'm doing well. Ira's, good to see you too. I just kind of missing my second home, man. Really my first home. So I haven't been here in a while, and I just decided that it would be good to do the show. Then while I was driving here, I heard Phil's call. I heard a couple other calls, and I started thinking about, man, wow, what am I going to say once I get in the studio? But it's good to be here.
Yeah, Phil is, what Phil's going to say before he calls in. So, I tend to, I almost tend to tune it out a little bit. But he brings up from time to time some points and maybe, shares the sentiment of some of the listeners out there that, and some of the questions that some of the listeners out there have. So we'll throw a few of them at you. I actually kind of want to go to a caller before Phil.
Okay.
And talk about Mark and Lansing, because he was talking about the secondary and the delineation of duties between Mallory and Manning. And we've talked about this before. But his question really was a more broad one. Is it reasonable to expect improvement from the corners in particular when you have a coach that's going to be coaching the position for the first time, or is it virtually impossible to have improvement in that scenario where you have a guy that's coaching a position that he's never coached before?
I think there's always a chance there can be improvement regardless of the scenario. And when you have the same coach, Mallory, still back there, he's still a part of the secondary, even though the responsibilities have been delegated or divided up. There's still one unit with two coaches. So anything Roy doesn't know, he can always have a conversation and a sit down with Kurt Mallory, because those guys are going to be in the same room, running the same coverages, and they're going to have to be on the same page. When you talk about improvement and from a secondary standpoint, I think you have to identify which areas you want to improve, because from an interception standpoint, you got a lot of production out of your two corners last year. A lot of, when you talk about 6 interceptions, that was the most since Todd Howard in 2001. I had 5, but I was a safety. Charles had 8. So I just think that you got to improve on tackling and giving up big plays and buckling down in 2-minute situations. I think that's where the secondary needs to improve, because when you look at a big run, go back to the Michigan State game where Jeremy Langford broke down the sideline. Ray Taylor took a poor angle, right? You can go back to the Ohio State game. I believe Jordan Lewis gave up a third and 9.
You go to the Nebraska game at the
at the end of 4th and 2 when we're playing off coverage. So I think what Roy brings to the table is a fresh, enthusiastic brand of coaching. I think the players at that position will relate to him. But I think
how big is that? Stop for a second. How big is the ability for a coach to engage a player, for a player to really kind of feed off his, because that seems to be, from talking to the players, that seems to be one of the qualities that Roy really brings to the table, is that he is really connected with his guys. Is that a big deal?
It's very important, because if Vance Bedford wasn't here, let me explain the difference between Billy Harris in 94, my first year, to 95 to 98 when we had Vance Bedford. We could relate to Vance Bedford as a person. We loved his brand of coaching. His instruction was on a high level. Charles Woodson could not backpedal when he got to this university. And in 3 weeks, Vance took him from a free safety / running back to an all-world cornerback, because he coached technique, and we trusted Vance. He was invested in our futures, our production on the field. I mean, he wanted us to be great, but he taught us the game. So I think when you have Roy and Kurt back there together, you get the best of both worlds. There may be a safety. See, I think Jabril Peppers will end up starting at safety this year.
I do
And
too.
so now Roy's a cornerback coach, but because they're in the same room or they're part of the same unit, now even though Kurt may be coaching Jabril, I think that he can still relate to Roy being in that room. So you get the best of both worlds. But when a player is engaged and you can inspire them, they will run through a wall for you. They will buy everything that you're selling, especially if they're getting the coaching and then they're on the field making plays.
One of the things that I brought up when we have Marcus Ray in studio for Rays of Light this morning, you know Aubrey Pleasant, a couple of years ago, this is how they did it. It wasn't listed that way in the program. You didn't see defensive or corners coach next to Aubrey's name, but that's how they did it. Aubrey would work with the corners and Mal would work with the safeties. And at that time, that dynamic really seemed to work for him, especially with some young guys at that time. Like Ray was really young at the time. They, were throwing him into the fire, trying to bring him along. And I really felt like that was an instance where he showed some real significant growth based on that breakdown and Aubrey working specifically with the corners. I think they looked at that and said, hey, maybe that's something that we can play off of, that we had some success doing it this way before. Maybe we can have even more success doing it in a formal capacity now.
Well, with the emergence of the spread offense, I think you need guys like that. And, yeah, I remember Aubrey. He did a great job back there helping out. And, see, when I was at Central Michigan, we actually had 3 secondary coaches. Tim Banks, the coordinator, he did the corners. Mike Kolakowski did the safeties, and I was the GA. But I was back there with the secondary. So we had 3. So if you can get as many guys as you can back there all working together, then those guys will elevate their play, or at least they'll have a chance of getting better. But Central Michigan in 2007 had the worst pass defense in America. Now, their offense was very explosive. They won the MAC, but their pass defense. So Butch Jones said, hey, you bring Marcus Ray in as a GA. You 2 guys coach the corners and safeties. I want as many eyes as possible back there. Coach all those guys up. So we could break guys in the pockets of 3 and 4 and coach them all up. So I think when you have guys back there that can do that, then you get players with more individual attention. But when you start to face 3 and 4 wide receivers every play, and then you have to understand how you, like, here's what's special about playing defensive back. Every snap, you need to know, if it's a pass, what do I do? If it's a run, where do I fit? So you have to understand where you are every play and what your responsibility is pre-snap, and then once the ball is snapped. So when you got guys that can, it's like being in a classroom when you can just break them up into small groups and just say, hey, listen, I'm going to coach you up for the next 30 minutes by yourself. You 3 guys line up like wide receivers. I'll show you a formation, and then you take your reps. So when you start to get that type of coaching, then that's when you'll see the improvement.
All right, we're talking to Marcus Ray, Rays of Light. I want to switch gears with you a little bit. So I want a little role play, Marcus, role play. All right, so Marcus Ray is dating Tiny from Escape.
There you go.
That's your squeeze, Tiny from Escape. And she's hanging out with Floyd Mayweather. And let's say you're feeling a little beside yourself because Tiny is hanging out with Floyd. Now, Marcus, I know you, and I know how you normally get down, so I can't see you getting too bent out of shape about Tiny hanging out with Floyd, but we're role playing here. So you see Floyd at Fat Burger, and you're a little beside yourself. Do you walk up and take a swing on Floyd Money Mayweather? Would Marcus Ray do that?
No, I probably wouldn't.
And you're bigger than Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, but Floyd he's awfully crafty. He's the best at what he does. What I would have did was have one of my partners sucker punch Floyd, and then I would have got a few kicks in when he was on the ground. And I would have made sure it was on Instagram. Like, I would have said, look, as soon as he's on the ground, start videotaping so it looks like I'm whooping Floyd. So, yeah, man, I mean, I think when it comes to your wife, your significant other, I think there's a fine line where there's a certain code that we have to protect where, like Floyd said, hey, don't get at me, control your lady. But I think that T.I. just, when it comes to Floyd, I don't think anybody wants Floyd around their lady right now. I mean, this guy's rich. I mean, I don't think he's great looking, but he's like the cutest guy out there. You can tell Floyd I said it. We can set that up. I'll fight Floyd for $40 million. I'll take a few.
I hear you on that.
But no, yeah, I mean,
but Floyd didn't get a whole lot in the gene pool, man. I mean,
no, he didn't. I mean, he's hard to look at.
He can't do a whole lot about that. I mean,
I think that's why
playing
he's
with
so
the hand he was
flashy.
dealt. I'm just saying. Man, you seen his dad in the corner?
Yeah, and his uncle. All of it's just the whole family just kind of, got to might as well throw Flavor Flav in there with them, so they all related. But
Yeah, they cousins, man, no doubt. No doubt.
No, but I just think that was the second encounter, I think, where he at least pulled Floyd to the side. And I think at this point Floyd was like, hey man, back up off me. It's not like that. But at the same time, as a man, if your wife is having any type of conversation with Floyd Mayweather, it's just time, I just think it'll make you feel some kind of way.
Well, I just don't think, as mad as he may have been, I don't think if Floyd Mayweather was sitting in Fatburger by himself and T.I. was walking down the street by himself, I don't think T.I. walks up and tries to take a swing at Floyd Mayweather.
I don't think so
I
either.
think when he has his entourage around him, you can feel a little bold.
Yeah, but see, my grandma said the best time to kick a man is when he's down or when you got a lot of people around you. And one-on-one, no. But when you got strength in numbers, go ahead and take a swipe at him. Throw a chair, pop off, get super bad. But understand that if it comes down to it, this is what Floyd does. But on the flip side, if it gets outside of the ring, then I'm going with T.I. But Floyd got the type of money to hire some killers now. So this whole thing is messy. Both of those young brothers are successful, and I just think in the world of social media and money and fame, I think it goes to everyone's head. So everybody's a tough guy now. And they're going to try to prove themselves whenever duty calls. But I just hope that we can come back in a couple weeks and these guys have made up.
Yeah, I thought it was fake at first, personally, because why would anyone try to take on the pound for pound champ?
Publicity, Sam. We talked about it yesterday.
Exactly.
He has a trilogy coming out and a movie.
That's what I thought. Maybe T.I. is trying to get some.
I think Floyd's going to be in it.
I think it helps, but I don't think he did it on purpose. He really seriously, has a beef with Mayweather when it comes to Tiny.
Do you think?
But Tiny, I wouldn't be fighting over Tiny though. That's what I was about to say.
That's the
real question. I'm looking like Tiny. Floyd, you can have Tiny. Do me that favor.
It's like you see what Floyd normally, the stable that Floyd normally has.
Come on, man.
Is on a certain level. And not to talk about any man's wife, but
because see, Tiny and Floyd are both hard to look at. Okay. And so they can have each other.
I can't go in on the man's wife. I can't do that. But I agree with you.
Now T.I. gonna be calling me. I'm going, hey, Ira, make sure you don't put this on. Because I saw TK on the ticker that one day, so you never know. T.I. gonna be calling me, man.
Oh man! All right, so let's play this.
I'm just gonna tweet directly at him for you.
Let's play this relationship game on the golf side of things.
Okay.
Marcus. So Rory McIlroy is engaged to, how do you say her? Wozniacki?
Caroline Wozniacki, I believe is how you pronounce it.
She's a tennis player, tennis pro. They're supposed to get married. And he's a guy that a few years ago, he was the next big thing in golf. And then all of a sudden, it's like, man, what's up with Rory? He's not doing it like we thought he was going to do it.
Okay.
He breaks off the engagement. As soon as he does, he goes out and wins the tournament, Marcus. She goes and she loses in the first round of the French Open. So she's distraught, but he looks like, wow, it's a weight off my shoulders. Is it really that huge a deal? What's going on in your personal life, what's going on with your woman, is it really that huge a deal that he could go from being a guy to being the guy, or are we just making too much out of the significance of him breaking off this engagement?
I think in this isolated case, yeah, it is a huge deal. We don't know what that man was dealing with behind closed doors, and for some people, relationships are a distraction. Sometimes you have to look at it like this too. Behind every great man is a woman, but behind the fall of every great man is another woman. So that's my ray of light for today.
I hear you.
But you never really know. But when you see how that man performed and he goes out and wins, as soon as he gets rid of that relationship, then that tells you something. I mean, were you ever
in any situation or scenario on a team, or you saw it from afar, where you saw a woman or some women affecting a player or a team? Have you ever?
Oh, what? From 94, 95, and 96, that was the problem on Michigan's football team, was the fact that that certain guys liked certain women and they were distracted by relationships, and there were a handful of us that chose to live a different way, and we just was like, we're going to stay focused on playing ball. But I saw our whole team was divided because of women, and I'm not going to get into any specifics, but we had a couple guys falling in love and getting distracted and quitting the team and not going to class because they saw their lady talking to me in the cafeteria. You know what I'm saying, Sam? So I had to lay my hands on a couple of those guys. But the thing was, our whole team was divided, top to bottom, and it started with women and then it branched off into other stuff. And I'm gonna tell you, you can ask anybody, they will tell you that story is true, that our team was divided and a lot to do with women. I mean, we were in West Quad face to face, knuckling up. I mean, fisticuffs ready to go on more than one occasion. And then the lines were drawn, and then the upperclassmen went with this side, and some of the other guys went over here. And then that's how the whole Biggie and Pac East Coast, West Coast beef started on our football team. Coach Carr said, "Hey, what is this East Coast, West Coast beef?" I was like, "Come on, Coach." But I didn't know if I was Biggie or if I was Suge Knight.
A couple of those women I could understand.
There you go now, because it was popping off around here in the mid-90s. We had a lot of nice-looking, educated women. And
some of them were from Flint.
Couple of them. Matter of fact, the main one that caused the problem was from Flint. As a matter of fact, from Flint Town Riders. You got to watch them.
Wow. 822. Who knew the Rays of Light was gonna go on so many tangents today?
Hey, that's what that in-studio feel does, man. So when I was driving down, I was like, man, I bet we about to have some fun, man.
822 on a Wednesday. All right. So since you're here, I gotta go ahead and pick your brain on a couple of other things.
Okay.
Relevant in sport. So let's get to a break. We'll get to a break. We'll come back on the other side. Marcus, you got to take advantage of you being in the studio, man.
I'm telling you, let's do it.
All right, back on the other side, more Rays of Light here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, the official voice of University of Michigan.